see myself as a traveler, just always looking at, who are these people? How did they decide to do this with their life? And what did education have to do with it, right? So along the way, Jody, I just found that, there's really an interesting approach to learning for life. And it seems to be a little backwards. It seems like by the time we wake up around 40, the midlife crisis, we realize, wow, I don't think I really became who I was supposed to be. And the question is, well, why not? Those are the questions that led me into coaching and neurolinguistics and hypnotherapy and, really looking at holistic thinking and holistic well-being and holistic learning. It's learning and healing from the inside out. And yet our systems are mostly outside in. So when I started to see that, I thought, it's time to get back and work with the youth because they have more knowledge than most people give them credit for, because they're in a system that's expecting them to regurgitate on cue something that someone else said they need to know. And they're moving further and further away from who they're meant to be. And it doesn't have to be that way. So that's my calling. It's like, hey, let's learn and grow together and become our highest and best selves without having to sell our soul for money or settle and play a small game because we think it's a competitive universe. The truth is, each person on this planet is unique, and young people know that, and somehow it's schooled out of them. So I think the idea of intergenerational learning, where we bring the different ages together, the youth have the innovative, idealistic vision, and many of the adults are looking for some joy and sense of fulfillment. So there's something really magical that happens when you bring them together. And it just has unfolded for me based on my own inquiries of, why is this working? What? I don't get it. Maybe it could be another way. You know what I mean? So it's my questions that sort of led me to designing Living the Potential Network and what we're creating now. Youth of all ages, especially, they're in the moment mostly, the younger, 5, 6, 7 years old. They're just the imagination, they're creative, there's so much there. And I feel like there's such a richness there about imagination. And we're moving into this new planetary time. I call it, one of my mentors is Robert Gilman, and he has the context.org. And in his work, he says, we're moving from the empire era to the planetary era. This is a historic time for the human species. And so a lot, as you notice with this pandemic, so many things are changing. And so many people feel victimized, like, oh no, what's, thinking like the answers are out there. Somebody's going to fix this. And I really believe that we each have a piece of the puzzle, that if we really could learn in community to bring the best of who we are to others of service and with gratitude, there's something else that's emerging. And that I'm seeing is happening right now with some of the organic learning models I've got going that include, I'd say, people from the ages of 16 all the way to 75 who are learning together. And it's just amazing, the breakthroughs that are happening, and the youth are going, wow, I'm so grateful that I'm being born now in this time, because, people who have gone through some really tough times, to allow us to have the freedom that we have now, is like they have an awareness, a historic understanding and gratitude. And the adults are going, geez, look at these kids. They don't have the baggage we have. You know what I mean? They're lighter. Like you said, there's more play and joy and like, hey, let's get in this and figure this out together. If it's climate change or, mental health issues, or the answers are generally in the room. It's just that we've been conditioned to look outside of ourselves rather than allow ourselves to be with the question and see what shows up through our communication in community. So the learning in community and intergenerational learning is inspiring, and adults are awakening to, hey, I might be retiring, but I'm not dead. And what is my gift that I can bring forward now in my life that I never thought I could? And the youth are going, I'm owning my gift, and look at all these adults who see me. I don't have to beg for, to be seen. I'm being seen and heard. And then something magical is happening as a result of those relationships. It's quite amazing to watch.
And I think the magic is that, as a matter of fact, one of the conversations I know that we've had is about who are we at our age, you know, and we're also changing. I mean, us baby boomers, we're charting different territory as well as we figure out what does 60 look like, what does 65 look like, and the kids are. I can see them helping us by
It's
giving us that.
reciprocal. Yeah, it's reciprocal exchange. It's almost like I love the saying that wisdom knows no age. It used to
Beautiful.
be like, oh, well, if you're older, you know, remember when you were a kid, people would say, well, you don't know anything. Wait until you graduate from high school or wait till you
Yeah.
graduate from college. You
You're
can't
too
do that.
young. Yeah,
You're
right.
not ready, you know?
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, we need the awakenings now, sooner than later. And there's something about the inquisitiveness of youth asking the appropriate question and the adults really listening and going, you know, let's figure that out together, as opposed to this isn't the right time for that, or shaming or making them wrong, or all of a sudden it opens up whole new territories for possibility. It's pretty amazing.
And I would almost venture to say the parts of our brain that would always say, you know, back in caveman times, it would say stop. Maybe we're also slowly but getting ready to evolve from that part. Maybe our actual brains will actually change with this new kind of concept, with this new world, because that old thing is kind of, it's outdone. It's outworn its usefulness.
Right. Well, that's interesting that you bring that up, because the new science, you know, it's really interesting. The quantum field, the whole idea of quantum mechanics, and the whole idea, I mean, it's been around for 40 or 50 years, but science, there's a battle for acceptance about that, about the electromagnetic field, and that we're all energy and we're constantly evolving. I mean, when I look at aging, I think about, wait a second, I'm making 300 billion new cells a day. How can I make the cells I'm making today be better than the ones I made yesterday? And when you really start to look at it, the new science, the new brain science, the new understanding of the quantum world, it's like it's all right here, right now. And it's our ability, our thoughts create our reality. And, you know, there's certain spiritual traditions that have been saying that all along, but now it's being scientifically validated.
Yes.
So the youth are, you know, the youth that are able to receive this information in their inquiries are now practicing and being in this quantum world, designing who they are becoming, and they're creating their best future in this moment by their choices. And that's not something you would normally get in a typical science classroom, because the science classrooms normally need to go by the textbooks, and the textbooks are many times 7 years behind. And everything's on the internet now, right? So your comment about brain and, you know, how are we shifting and changing? It's just by us being on Zoom and our technology and artificial intelligence that's coming forward in terms of we're going to create robots to be like humans. But the question is, what's the ethical dilemma there? What will those robots be like? What parts of human will show up in these robots? And how will that impact our brain?
How do you use collaboration, and what does it mean to you? And what would you look for in somebody to collaborate with?
Well, that's a really good, I think it's the practice of collaboration. You know, the practice of what I've been doing is asking youth for every event that we do an event called the Garden Experiment, and it's based on our organic learning model for life. And we start with a series of questions. So we ask the youth on the panel, and it's generally, tell me, you know, what's been working well for you in your educational experience? What's the highlights? What are some of the things that didn't work for you? What are you most passionate about? And what do you want the adults in the room to know? So out of that, the youth share some really amazing insights, and the adults are listening, and they're going, you know, when I did this live in Washington, D.C. before the pandemic, there wasn't a dry eye in the house when they heard what the youth had to say. And one of the youth said, you know, just not sure. This was before the pandemic. And before the pandemic, they were talking about their biggest concerns were climate and the climate disruption and what the earth would be like in the future, what's happening with social justice. This was before George Floyd. They were already speaking all this, right? And then the idea of what about social injustice and how do we get it along? It was during the tumultuous last election and president that we had that created such a polarity in this country. Youth were really concerned about that. And they were saying, what can we do about it? So as the adults listened, we then, created a workshop environment where we were able to take the great ideas, and the youth worked with the adults in breakout rooms to cultivate solutions. And then they began to cross-pollinate some of those solutions and then look at systems and what can we do to bring it about a positive change. And by the end of the day, through the collaboration, Jody, we had a list of possibilities that was just amazing that people could begin doing right here, right now. I could speak for myself. I go to the doctor and they say, well, you got this issue, but you're just getting older, Yes. So you think that with each decade, people are falling apart? Is that your belief? I say to the doctor, well, yeah, that's what happens. I go, well, what about regenerative nutrition? And what about holistic views of health and well-being? What if you could actually rebuild, repair, and regenerate yourself to be a much younger person, younger than your chronological years? Do you believe that's possible? And if I'm working with a professional who doesn't believe that, I just fire them. You're not on my team. You're not on my team, because the reality of it is, and I just saw this the other day in a scientific literature that said, there's a very good chance that we're going to live well beyond 100. And that when we get there, the 100 is going to be the new 60. You know how it is where we're saying now the 60 is the new 40? Well, it's like youthful longevity comes through relationships and purpose and passion. So I would say to all the women and, gender doesn't, women, men, doesn't, it's really about your gifts and what have you been cultivating your life, your 10,000 plus hours of experience. Who else cares about that? And where could you make a contribution in a way where we could actually live our legacy rather than leave a legacy? It just regenerates the whole enthusiasm for life. Jody, you're doing a fabulous job with what you're doing, like connecting technology with people who might be intimidated by it and having them overcome that and then recognize the power that comes from using tools effectively to build relationships. It's like, that's huge, and I don't know if you had that idea a long time or if it's just been emerging over time, but it's just fabulous. You have your gift, you're bringing it forward to other people who could benefit. That's what I think we could all do.
And it's like you say, we can be that quote unquote young. There's even words I think that are going to be just changed. The word aging, the word old, young, that kind of thing. But right now, those are the only words that can really describe it, because what you are doing, and me in my own small way, is really igniting that childlike zest that I can do that. I mean, I remember when I taught my 5-year-olds, I taught for years in kindergarten, and I remember they would say, I can do that. And then they go on and they do something else. And there was no fear.
Right.
What you going to do it?
Exactly. So we need energy. That's the thing is, the energy is like, you have the energy for life, then the aging takes on a whole different, it's something, yes, we're all traveling around the sun every year, another trip around the sun, but how we move. And if you've ever been to a high school reunion, you can see that people age at different rates. And I think it has a lot to do with their mindset and their beliefs and their community. So if you're in a community with people who are excited about learning, bringing who they are to what they do, and continuing to evolve, because I think we've got it, even the way we look at aging, when we say, okay, what are you going to do when you retire? Like people, what are they retiring from? They're retiring from something that they dedicated themselves to, but what else is emerging here? It's not like a dead-end road. Okay, you've now retired, start counting the days before you check out, it's like, well, what's next? And if you have the energy and enthusiasm, and you're in a mixed, what should I say, community of learners who are interested in the same thing you are, because remember, wisdom knows no age. I'd love to share with you the technology interests of the youth. I have an idea for you where, you know, this idea of connecting the generations, where the youth can be supportive in helping grandma and grandpa, you know, great grandma, great grandpa.
I love it.
Tools. And it's so exciting because they're learning what the youth is teaching the elders is amazing. But what the elders are sharing with the youth is their story of like, oh, you know, and then wouldn't it be cool if out of that came a project that says, through this shared interest in technology and the idea of stories and ancestry of who these youth are. And I think the secret is you don't have to have the answer. Being really thoughtful listeners and asking really good questions and then seeing what emerges. I love the topic of emergence. What's emerging in this moment? And do you all feel that right now? Do you feel it? Okay, what should we do with that? It's like, oh, well, what about this? Well, you know what? I never thought about that. Who else wants to do that? Right? It's like the co-creative, innovative spirit takes over and amazing outcomes that have high impact come together. It's pretty amazing.